Hello and welcome to another episode of English Speaking Made Easy, your guide to good English. In the last episode, I had given you the very basics of how to define a verb. In fact, from this episode onwards, we're going to get right down to business on what is important when we deal with verbs. So this is what we're going to cover in our first section, the Grammar Express. In the last episode, we dealt primarily with main verbs. But today we are going to do something related to auxiliary verbs. Main verbs are the standalone verbs in a sentence. Okay, like verbs like he fought with me. Fought is the main verb. Okay, I walk to class every day. Walk is the main verb. They don't need anyone to the standalone verbs. With just by themselves they can convey a meaning. But what we are going to do today is what you call auxiliary verbs. Now auxiliary sounds like a very fancy word. What actually it means is it's a helping verb. Sometimes they also serve as main verbs, and in the cases here what I am going to deal with is how these auxiliary verbs come along with the main verbs. I mean, they are often placed just before the main verbs, and the purpose of these auxiliary verbs are to help the main verbs. Okay, generally they can't stand alone, they need the main verbs to kind of lend meaning to a sentence. Now, why is it important to know about these auxiliary words? Why is it so important that we know about them? One reason why auxiliary verbs are important is primarily because they denote the tense of the sentence, which means if you are a student who is trying to improve her grammatical accuracy, you need to be able to know how to use the right helping words to make your sentence error-free. Tenses rely very heavily on how we use these auxiliary verbs, and then I am sure that itself tells you why it is so important to be able to understand and to use these auxiliary verbs well. There are of course many kinds of auxiliary verbs. You can have the basic forms, you can also have the modal auxiliaries. Today I am just going to deal with three main auxiliary verbs. Okay, they are the words do, be and have. Okay, so the three auxiliary verbs I will be dealing with today are do, be and have. Now these words by themselves look okay, what kind of verbs are they? But I will just tell you the very first rule you need to remember. When you see the word do, remember this stands, do always exists in the simple tenses, that is in the simple present tense, in the simple past tense. Be on the other hand exists in the continuous tenses, and have exists in the perfect tenses. It may kind of confuse exactly how do we understand, but just keep these three things in mind: do, present, simple present and simple past tenses, have perfect tenses, and be in the continuous tenses. This particular part of understanding these three auxiliary verbs, it is very important. Now what we are going to do is, how are these, when you use these auxiliary verbs, you need to remember that these auxiliary verbs have to agree with the subject. Okay, so there are areas of agreement with the subject. There are also certain things with regard to pronunciation that I will be dealing with when it comes to these auxiliary verbs. Now when I said the auxiliary verb has to agree with the subject, it means the number of the subject will determine the kind of auxiliary verbs we use, that is singular or plural will have an impact on which auxiliary verb we use. For example, in a sentence, I am studying, here it is I, so the auxiliary verb is am. and if it was they, it would be are. They are studying. So you see the agreement. Now it says he. He is studying. That's because he is a singular. But if you're using a plural, it would be they are studying. Sounds so simple, yet many of them create errors primarily when they write in these simple things as letting the subject agree with the verb. Okay. Now, in positive sentences, what happens is these auxiliary verbs are not content words, they are function words, and being function verbs, when we say them, they are not stressed upon, which means when we use these words, they are unstressed, and often you won't even hear them being, you will see them being spoken very quickly. They are not often stressed. Most of the time these words are either contracted or reduced. So in normal speech, it might be very difficult to hear and differentiate these words. I'll show this to you through an example. Look at this word, okay? If you read the sentence as in connected natural English, it's like, I'm shopping for shoes. I'm shopping for shoes. See, but where is the auxiliary verb? Do you see it there? It is I am, but the am is not stressed. You may not even have heard it, I am shopping for shoes. There are of course people who say it like that, I am shopping for shoes, but that's very amateurish. In a natural way, we do not say I am, I'm shopping for shoes. So the am gets contracted. The same comes in when we are looking at this next sentence, he is taking his time. There is an is there, but do you actually hear that pronounced strongly? No. It's unstressed, it's contracted. He's taking his time. I bought a new pair of jeans. All these words, you can see the auxiliary verbs being contracted and they are unstressed. I bought a new pair of jeans. Not stressed. On the other hand, when you make these same sentences into negative, in a positive sentence they are unstressed, but in negative sentences the auxiliary verbs are stressed. You cannot say that sentence without stressing it. That's the primary difference. See, here also it is contracted. Did not becomes didn't, but we have to stress it. You say, I didn't like it. We haven't heard from him in a while. So these words, when they come in negative sentences, they are stressed. In the other hand, they are unstressed. In the examples before, the auxiliaries were not attached to the subject. Now let's look at and see how these auxiliaries sound when they are attached to the subject. Earlier they were always attached to the verb. So look at this. Instead of saying we have not been there yet, the have has been attached to the subject, to the pronoun we. And then when you say it together, it's we've not been there yet. We've not been there yet. So we've that is where the contraction has been attached to the subject. So learning how to contract these auxiliary verbs, I had discussed this in detail once, how to use these contractions. It is very, very important because this is what will instantly make you sound more professional, more natural, and that is how native speakers use the language. So don't take these contractions lightly. It's very important to know how to use contractions when you are speaking. That is when you sound more relaxed, more comfortable, more natural. Okay, so that was about those practicalities. Now let's go on to the words that we had discussed before, the three important words, the do, the be and have. The first, let's see, I told you do always goes with the simple tenses, simple present tense and simple past tense, and it can come both in the positive and a negative, do and don't, do and do not. So we'll just have a look at how do is used. There are two forms of do. There is a do and there is a does. So do and does are the two forms of this. So when do we use do and when do we use does? Here I mentioned before that this is also something called a subject verb agreement bit. But then the question is, where do we use the do and where do we use the does? Here it may not really be the number of the subject. Here do and does, the difference in which we use them depends upon the person. In English we have three persons. You have a first person, you have a second person, and you have a third person. So when you're using the word do, I do my work well. I, first person. We, first person. We do our work well. So remember, in the first person we use do. That is I and we, the word which comes later is do. In the second person, singular, that is he and she and it. In these words we use does. Plural is they do not, but he and she will take a does not. So remember, I do my homework well. I do not do my homework well. We do our homework well. We do not do our homework well. In all these sentences, it is singular first person. So we use do. In the second person singular, we use does. That is he, she and it. He does his homework well. She does her homework well. It does have a tail. So in these three words we use does. And then in the plural, in the second person plural, we use they. They do their homework well. So you see, in the plural form and in the first person we use do, second person singular we use does. That sounds a little confusing, but this is how the word, this is not related to your singular or plural, but to the person. I think it's easier to remember. I do, he does, she does, we do, they do. Just take it like that so you don't get confused between which person it is. So if you really want to use it well, you need to write it down, make sure you remember it like this, and then perhaps use it. Okay? So the two forms of the word did is do and does. The past tense form of the word do is did. So we'll just look at a few sentences there. I did not understand, or I do not understand your language. Now we have a past tense. They didn't want to go out, or they did want to go out. You can make it positive or negative. He doesn't eat meat, or he does eat meat. Did he steal it? I'll do it tomorrow. These are the kind of sentences you're making with do, does and did. Do you eat fish on Mondays? Now, like I mentioned about the three auxiliary verbs I'm going to deal with now. One was do, one was be, and the other was have. Okay, so first let me tell you how you can use these in the simple tense. Okay, in the simple tense, what we do is we use do in the simple present and in the past tenses. So what are the forms of the word do that we need? Do and does are used in the present tense, and did is used in the past tense. If we look at a few of these sentences, you will understand. I do not understand your language. See the word do. They didn't want to go out. That's a negative. He doesn't eat meat. Did he steal it? I'll do it tomorrow. Okay, so you see all these words. Do you eat fish on Mondays? All these are different sentence constructions, negative, positive and questions related to the word do. So remember its forms do, does and the past tense form did. The minute you use these words, it will automatically be a simple present tense or a simple past tense form. Now we look at be. Now be as such is not used so much. We use different forms of be. You may be using these words without actually realizing that they are the forms or the variants of be. The words, the forms, the different forms of be are, first one, are, is, am. These are all used in the progressive and the continuous tense. The words am, is and are. Okay. Now let's see which words are used in the past continuous tenses. We use was and were. So, am, is and are in the present continuous tense, was and were in the past continuous tense, and be is also used along with I will be doing in the future tense. Now, we look at a few sentences quickly. In the present continuous tense, we are going to Cochin tomorrow. That is present. That's one form of be, are. Okay. Is he coming home today? That's an is. They were traveling to Ooty when the accident happened. Past continuous. She was wearing a blue dress. Again, past continuous singular. She was wearing a blue dress today. Were you trying to call me? Were you? So we had were, was, is and are. And now you will see a sentence in the future. He will be presenting at 8 a.m. Okay, that's in the future. Aren't we talking to Sarah? Aren't we talking about Sarah? These are how these sentences play out in the continuous form with a was and a were, was, is, are and am. Then we have the word have. I mentioned that the have or its variant has are used in the present perfect tense. Now, nothing to worry when you look at these words and you're very unfamiliar with what a present perfect tense is. You just need to understand this now, and we will do it later in much more detail. We use the main verb of the present perfect tense will be in the past participle form. We will do it later. So, the had, just now what you need to understand is the past tense and the present tense forms of these of the verb has. Of the word has, the present tense form is have and has, and the past perfect tense form is had. The future tense is again have with a will joined to it. Will have. That's how it goes in. So, we just need you to understand the different forms of these three words of be, of do and have, and just see how we've played out the examples. So, have and had and has go with the perfect forms of the verb. Look at these sentences and it will make you clear. The first example, Kate has taken the car. If you look at that word, Kate, has is the auxiliary, taken is the past participle. And don't worry with taken, we are going to do an entire section of what past participles are. That's how the word sentence is constructed. It hasn't arrived yet. It hasn't arrived yet. Okay, that's the negative form of the verb have. We've been waiting for hours. He will have finished it by 5 p.m. That is the future tense form of the verb. Okay. Now, that's a bit confusing. That has a lot, but the crux of what I was trying to tell you is how to use the three auxiliary verbs, the three primary auxiliary verbs, that was be, do and have. As long as you've understood this one bit, that be and its forms, do and its forms in the past and the present, that will do for you to start off with how to use these auxiliary verbs. I'll just rewind. Do has a do and a does in the present, did in the past. Be has is, are and am in the present continuous, and a was and a were in the past. Similarly, have and a has in the present, had in the past. At least so much is what we've been trying to get you to understand. So, these three verbs and the tenses that accompany them are very, very important in your understanding of tenses. Now, we are moving on to the next section, that is Lexica. It is your guide to vocabulary. In this section, what we have is, I'm going to give you certain words that describe how people look, or what we call people's appearances. The most common thing when we notice about a person, you see a person, one of the first things that you're looking out for is, does this person look good? Is he or she good looking? And we use a lot of words to describe people who look good. Some of these words are very, very common. Just going to take you through them very quickly. The first word we use is good looking. Oh, he's very good looking. Good looking is a gender neutral word. You can use it for a woman or a man, for a male or a female. He is good looking, she is good looking. We use it both ways. Okay, but there are certain words which we cannot use with both the sexes. Attractive also is another word that is can be used for both men and women. But remember, beautiful. Beautiful is someone who is very, very pretty, someone who's extremely good looking. That's when we use the word beautiful. It's more than pretty, more than attractive. Someone who's extremely good looking, we use the word beautiful. What you need to remember is beautiful is only used with women. You don't refer to a man as being beautiful. That would be extremely awkward. But the word we use when you want to describe men and their looks is the word handsome. And we use it primarily for men. Like would say Brad Pitt or George Clooney is a very handsome man. We wouldn't use that for women. So remember, beautiful is for women, handsome is for men. Another word, like we said, good looking and attractive. Another word which we can use for both sexes is the word gorgeous. So primarily we use it more for women, but gorgeous also means someone who is strikingly attractive, very beautiful. Like we say, Aishwarya Rai looked gorgeous today. It can be used both for men and women. Now what about the other? That is, these were words which we use for people who are very beautiful. Now what about people who do not, who are, we say someone is very plain looking. Oh, she's very average looking. She's very ordinary looking. And these words are generally referred to, we call them the girl next door. Now we see a new film actor and a new actress, and she's just okay, average looking. So we refer to her as the girl next door, which means she's not extremely beautiful. She looks like you and me. She's like a girl next door. Someone who's average looking, someone who's very plain. Oh, she looks so plain. That's the other side of being beautiful. She's not too beautiful. She's plain looking. She's average looking. That's how we refer to those kind of, for people that way. Then when you have men or even women who've lost hair and they've no hair, and you refer to them as being bald, B-A-L-D. There's an A there, but it's not bald, it is bald. He is bald. In America and all that, women who have, or men and women who have golden yellow hair are said to be very attractive. We refer to them as being blonde, B-L-O-N-D or B-L-O-N-D-E. No, blonde, someone who has yellow hair. What about when you're trying to describe a person who is a little on the heavier side? You know, you use words like, you can't, when you refer to a person as being fat. Fat by the word, and the word itself is very impolite. It's very demeaning to call someone fat. So we kind of got a lot of other words we use which don't kind of make that person feel that it's negative. One word is chubby. Chubby is a very polite way of saying that someone is overweight. You know, so this is a better equivalent to using the word fat. And another kind of thing is what we call flabby. You know, your muscle tone, you can feel your skin sagging a little bit because you have very poor muscle tone. That could be because you haven't been getting a lot of exercise. So you refer to those people as being flabby. Flab is that like flesh, literally you can feel the flesh out. So especially when you don't exercise and you're very sedentary, you don't have, very inactive, your body tends to become flabby. So look at those words. Don't use the word fat, or even the word obese is like clinically you're obese. But these words can be a little strong and negative. Use smoother words. Use words like chubby. Use words like, chubby is a nice word. And sometimes he says a little on the heavier side. That's a little better than referring to a person directly as being fat. I also gave another word, flabby. Now on the other side of the spectrum, you have people who could be very thin. So when you see a thin person and you refer to them, oh my God, she's so skinny, that's impolite. Referring to a person directly and saying that a person is very skinny is impolite. On the other hand, you can say, oh, she's nice, she's slim. She's slim, much better. Skinny is negative, slim is Oh, positive. There's some people who are very slender. They're very slim, but they look healthy. So that's a positive word. Oh, she's very slender. She looks very slender. But slim, I think, is also a really good word even for these kind of people. Now there are people who may not really don't maintain themselves well. They dress up and they don't keep themselves clean. You see a person like that, you refer to a person as being very unkept. Very unkept, because he looks scruffy. He does not look like he is clean. UNKEMPT. That's the word you refer to people who do not take care of his or her appearance. Okay. Now we are going on to our next section, that is, let's say it right. In this section, I've just brought in a few words which, because of by nature of the spelling, they tend to create a lot of confusion. So we'll just deal with a few words which are kind of confusing here. So look at these word sets. The first one is the word B-A-T-H-E. The next word is B-A-T-H without the E. The pronunciation of both these words are quite different. They all refer to the process of bathing, kulikkuka, but still with each form of that word the pronunciation changes. So just repeat with me so you will be able to understand how the pronunciation changes. B-A-T-H-E, bathe, the, bathe. B-A-T-H, bath. B-A-T-H-I-N-G, bathing. And the next one, bathed. So here among these four words, only the word bath has a th sound coming in. All the other words have the, bathe, bath, bathing, bathed. I hope you get that difference in that sound. The next one, the only difference between two words is perhaps an additional S in the second one. One is desert, D-E-S-E-R-T, which means Madhubhumi, a desert. The other just has an additional word, D-E-S-S-E-R-T. If one is desert, if Madhubhumi is desert, the final course of a meal, where you have a sweet dish or an ice cream, it's called a dessert. So desert is an arid landscape. Dessert is something sweet that you have at the end of a meal. So look at the words. Spelling of both the words are very similar, but the pronunciation is different. Desert, dessert. Desert, dessert. And the other one, both the words have a similar spelling, but there are two meanings that this word can have. C-O-N-T-E-N-T can be content or content. Both of that depends upon the meaning we ascribe to the word. If you want to speak about it as being, I'm very happy with what I have, you say I'm very content, and the vowel sound is a, content. But on the other hand, if you want to refer to what is included in something, ഈ ബോക്സിലുള്ള സാധനങ്ങൾ, it is its content. If you have a book, the book has about 10 chapters. That is the content of a book. It's not the content of a book. So if you see in books, you might see a word listed, C-O-N, contents. It's not contents. So the word has a similar spelling, but it has two different meanings. The meanings differ based on the context in which it is used. Okay. This we come to an end of today's episode. And I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you have ample takeaways regarding grammar and the elements of pronunciation and vocabulary I shared with you. Until we meet again, this is me signing off. Thank you.